What did you make of that long press conference at Mar-a-Lago? First and foremost, let's get the snowball rolling here.
I think it's very important to always remember that President-elect Trump is and will be a transactional president. Therefore, whatever he says, you have to examine it from what it means from a transactional perspective. So, first of all, as far as NATO contributions are concerned, he had said in his first presidency also that he doesn't understand why US should be making such a huge contribution when others don't pull their weight. And because of the pressure he put, the contributions did go up. However, what he forgets is that because United States pays such a huge amount to NATO, that's why they call the shots in NATO. So he can't have it both ways. So I'm sure he'll come to a balance, but it will be transactional. Let's move to what he said about the Panama Canal. What he said and what he has underlined is that when the sovereignty was handed back to Panama, it was not supposed to be handled by the Chinese. And he says that the Panama Canal is being handled by the Chinese. So therefore, the Americans have given away a huge strategic asset to Panama, but Panama has given it to China and he's not willing to accept that. As far as Greenland is concerned, and Greenland, please don't forget, has huge assets, strategic assets. He says that people of Greenland don't want to be positioned the way they are, and it is a natural part of US, United States' policy of protection of its far-lying territories. Therefore, I would not call it imperialist. I would call it again transactional. As far as Canada is concerned, he's preparing Canada for huge tariffs, which he's going to impose. He's preparing Canada not from an imperialistic perspective, from a pure business transactional perspective. It's not going to be business as usual. That has already seen the departure of Trudeau, and I'm not shedding any tears on that. No surprise to anyone, I presume. There will be a change of government in Canada, I'm sure. The Conservatives will come back. Some kind of deal will be worked out between the Canadians and Trump's administration. But he is preparing Canada and the Canadian government and the Canadian regime by saying what he is saying because of the transactional nature of his pronouncements. So therefore, I don't think it's imperialistic. The United States has never been an imperialistic power in the classical sense, as United Kingdom was, as France was, etc. The United States neo-imperialism came after World War II, when they became gradually the only superpower. Here, Trump is asserting himself and making it clear that what the American deep state wanted is not going to be in his priority list. He has already said he's going to destroy the American deep state. Whether he does that completely or not, we will have to watch and wait. But there is no doubt that his pronouncements must have caused a lot of discomfort to the American deep state, to those who controlled the narrative, to the George Soros of the world who have been rewarded by this wonderful American medal by Joe Biden. George Soros himself must be very thankful that he got the medal now, because there would be no chance of getting it once Trump takes over. So this is an indication of a new American administration. Actually, I find it very interesting. And from India's perspective, many of the things he said suits us just fine. Those are my comments, initial comments.
Ambassador, for those, Mr. Chand, I'm going to quickly come to you next. Do you concur with what the ambassador is saying here, transactional president? And how do you look at, some of those things that Donald Trump said, at Mar-a-Lago? Some of the most interesting ones was, of course, America and Canada. Wouldn't that be great? You do away with that artificial line, and we don't need anything that they have. We don't need their dairy products. We don't need any of that. Instead, we're paying money to protect them.
Right. I think Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee was absolutely right that it is an expression of transactional diplomacy, transactional policy, which Trump has come to be identified. It is his trademark, He's basically putting some straight questions and actually making a lot of economic logic. We don't need your cars. We don't need your milk. We don't need your lumber. You're burning, and you look at it, $40 billion trade deficit, and you're providing a free ride. So his calculation of trade deficit Canada is around $200 billion plus, because including security, how much it costs for American forces to keep Canada secure. That is typically his, and he said it at a casual, as a sort of casual over the table dinner conversation. But there was a deeper message. He was also pandering to his base, I mean, he was re-elected on the agenda of MAGA, making America great again. And what he said to Canada, it must have appealed to that, white nationalist, supremacist base. One can take it lightly as a sort of, which is what you don't know what he means, whether it was a joke or a threat. Even Canadians are confused, but there is a certain history to it. Canada from time to time had an existential threat from the US. If you go back in history, there were some serious attempts, and the circumstances in which Canada was created. So he probably means a lot more than that. It is not just a joke. But yes, the economic logic is so strong that he has to deliver on the trade deficit. But also, although, as Ambassador Mukherjee rightly pointed out, America is not an imperialist power. But if you see all of his Mar-a-Lago press conference, there was a streak of, supremacy, to reassert American supremacy, kind of expansionism. It's like making America great again. It's some kind of vague, it's kind of articulation of the idea of manifest destiny, which was there in the 19th century, that America should occupy all of it. America is basically the entire North America, so to speak, and that comment on Canada is to be seen as part of that. But in cutting to the time we are living in, he is unveiling a vision of American resurgence that includes also expansionism of sorts. Now, how much of that will be real? It will threaten a lot of people, but he means it partly because he's also talking in terms of economic expansion. He's talking about Greenland we want because it's important for America's national security. He says he wants Panama Canal, and the China, apart from the China factor, we need it for economic security. So he is trying to make America a great power, and this comes amid often on and off speculation about America's decline, and he want to put that narrative. He want to really put an end to that narrative and send this message very loudly that America is back and will continue to be the
But I'll tell you what, Mr.
leading
Chand,
power in the foreseeable future. Yeah.
What ends up happening is that he's making these serious accusations. He's talking about his expansionist ideology, and then suddenly most of the visuals that are doing the rounds is him dancing in those cute weird steps that he usually does. Now, Ambassador, I'm going to play out a bite. This is the exact moment when he says that all hell will break out if hostages are not released before I assume office in West Asia. Let's listen in to what Donald Trump had to say, and I'll come back for your opinion next.
Those hostages aren't back. I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. There should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that.
Ambassador, this is great pressure tactic now, isn't it? I mean, for starters, he's already said the minute I assume office, Ukraine-Russia war will cease to exist. He's not divulged how he's going to do that. I remember speaking to Mr. Chand when he was in Kazan as well over the same, same issue as well. But Ambassador, I mean, these kind of statements coming out, how are you looking at these?
It's also a message to Netanyahu to tone down the kind of demands that he's been making for the return of the hostages. It's when he says all hell will break loose, he doesn't say where all hell will break loose. But if all hell breaks loose in Lebanon and in Gaza, it will also all hell will break loose in the border areas of Israel. So he doesn't say that, but as I said, he's a very smart transactional businessman. If we had one or two of them in India, it would have been great. He is delivering a clear message about the hostages, but he is delivering an implicit message to the Israeli Prime Minister, who has been extremely intransigent and has not listened to anything that the Biden administration and Biden has tried. So he is saying that, guys, enough is enough. Whether you like it or you don't like it, this is going to come to an end. Exactly the way that he has done it for Russia Ukraine, which has actually resulted in the Russians grabbing as much territory as they can. And we had a debate separately on another channel on that. And the Ukrainians desperately hanging on to a little chunk of Russian territory because they know that when those inevitable negotiations will come ASAP after he takes over, each side will hold on to a little bit of territory and the Russians will hold on to a major chunk of Ukrainian territory and that conflict will come to an end. I am confident that both conflicts will come to an end because he also delivered a message to the Iranians. And the Iranians know very well that if they want to be reintegrated into the economic order, etc., they can't continue the way they are continuing. So it's a message to both. So when he says, it's like what you said about him dancing and talking. He delivers different messages in different languages, in different tonalities. It's never a straight message. It's a message to different people. So I think it was also a message to Netanyahu that please move fast.
No, that's a pertinent point, Ambassador. I mean, you're absolutely right. He doesn't essentially specify where all hell is going to break loose if it already hasn't broken loose in West Asia. Mr. Chand, next up, let's talk a little bit about NATO as well. From 2% of GDP, he wants to push them to start splurging 5% of the GDP on defense sector. Let's listen in to what Donald Trump had to say, and we'll go back to Mr. Chand for more.
And that's always been, and nobody knows more about NATO than I. You know, years ago when I first started this, I didn't know too much about NATO, but I got it right anyway. I said they're taking advantage. I'm the one that got, and the Secretary General was here, as you know, 2 weeks ago, saying that if it weren't for me, NATO wouldn't even exist right now because I raised from countries that weren't paying their bills. At that time, 28 countries, 20 of them were not paying their bills, 21 to be exact. They weren't paying. Or they were paying a very small portion. And I raised over $680 billion, that was the number he gave, by saying, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. And as soon as I said that, the money came pouring in.
Now, Mr. Chand, imagine Zelensky is hearing all of this as well. And we're trying to ask the question if this is a strained alliance or is this a stronger alliance? He says, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even have a NATO in the first place.
No, I think if you take a long view of this, what he's saying, what he's implying, and if other countries start putting in the money, and it is high time they did that, NATO will eventually become stronger, some would say. So I don't think NATO is going anywhere, despite all his bluster and, very cavalier comments about NATO. But, what you have to really look at it is this very straight talk that you cannot have countries freeloading, It doesn't want freeloaders. All the countries, like look at Japan, look at other people, other countries, including Canada, others. Now they have become rich and powerful, because of the security umbrella provided by the United States, Europe including. So why should America connive in its own decline and diminution if you take the long view? So I think he has a point there. Yes, I mean, this comments will not be liked by leaders like, Zelensky, who see all this as aspirational, joining NATO and all that. And in some ways, bolstering NATO, bolstering the global security architecture is a part of it. And also, NATO has polarized. See what NATO has done in Europe. In fact, that NATO's eastward march has only led Putin, has exacerbated insecurity of Russia.
Well, it seems like a little bit of a technical difficulty with Mr. Chande. We're going to let him, complete his thoughts in just a while. Ambassador, I'm going to come to you quickly next. Let's quickly shift our focus back to Panama Canal just for a second. I mean, we're talking about military action. Of course, Canada is not going to be so much of a military action. But what about the Panama Canal? I mean, what kind of implications are we looking at, or what kind of implications could arise if Trump actually pursues military action over the canal?
I don't see any problem at all, because the Panama Canal sovereignty was handed over to Panama with certain conditions attached. Those conditions were not attached, but did not include Panama handing over the administration of the canal to China. So
Ambassador, if I could interject you here, and my apologies for doing so, with your permission, of course, can we play out the foreign minister's bite from Panama so that the viewers also have a better understanding of what happens on the other side as well? Let's quickly play that out and we'll go back to Ambassador.
Our canal sovereignty is not negotiable and is part of our history of struggle and an irreversible conquest. Our canal has the mission to serve humanity and its trade. That is one of the values that Panamanians offer to the world, giving guarantee to the international community not to take part, nor be an active part of any conflict. The only hands that control the canal are Panamanian, and it will continue to be so. We are a country open to dialogue today and always to investments in good relations, but with the clear slogan that the homeland is first. Mr. Trump's opinions today, that he has talked about a certain amount of money, are not true. No kind of offer has been received. Let it be clear. No kind of offer. Let it be clear. The canal is Panamanian, and it will continue to be so.
Ambassador, no kind of offer, non-negotiable, our sovereignty, our history. That's what Panama feels like.
Just he should be given the map of Panama and the map of United States. He should be asked to count how many soldiers he has and how many the Americans have. Basically, again, it's transactional. This will ensure that Panama will hand over control of the administration of Panama Canal to the Americans and take it away from the Chinese. It's very clear. He's not going to annex the Panama Canal, but his threat to do so will result in a sobered down Panamanian administration asking the United States to administer the Panama Canal, which is what he wants. He's not interested in administering the Panama Canal. He is interested in reasserting American control over the Panama Canal, which United States has lost because it did not stop Panama in the first place from asking the Chinese to administer it. So in a way, it was the laxity of earlier administrations that led to this position, which President-elect Trump is going to correct. That's why I said that you have to always look behind his language to see what he means. As far as annexing the Panama Canal is concerned, the Americans can do it in 48 hours. They don't need any approval from anybody. But the point here is, and moreover, they are permanent members of the Security Council, so they will just veto if there is any condemnation. But he doesn't want that. He just wants to take over control, strategic control. The Panama Canal is a strategic asset for the United States, like Greenland. And he wants to take over the strategic control of the Panama Canal. And he will surely do that no matter how much this gentleman we just saw is ranting and raving in Spanish. He knows the reality because people in that part of the world are very smart and realistic. He knows that ultimately it's a negotiation. He's a tough negotiator. He's making it clear. You listen to my terms, otherwise you lose sovereignty. He will definitely listen to Trump's terms. Very soon, in fact. It won't take long. I'm sure of that.